to order at 7:03 p.m. And the first thing is the adoption of the agenda for September 14th. Are there any changes or additions, administration?
No, there isn't, Deputy Mayor.
And from council, Mayor Poole?
I would like to add under 12.1 FCM Sustainability Communities.
Okay. And can I get a motion? Councilor Pell?
Thank you. Move to approve as amended.
All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. And we will move right into 6.1, request for decision, records and information management bylaw.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. I bring to you today a couple of documents for your consideration. The first one is the Records and Information Management Bylaw, 1249.02 or 0.20. Sorry, dyslexia. And the reason why we're bringing this forward today is because our old bylaw, 893.01. Was considered outdated, and we needed to bring something that was a lot more feasible to us, or to the town. The second one we're bringing forward is Records and Information Management Policy, 144.20. What this will do is the combination of the two documents will be allowing us to be able to react quicker for creating file plan or records retention policy for all of our documents. And so today we are looking for, our recommendation is for passing of both of these documents. Do you have any further questions?
Any questions? Mayor Poole?
Thank you. I have a couple of them.
Okay.
The first one is under the explanation under back discussion on page 1. And I'm just wondering, what is an example of functional versus subjective information and filing?
Okay, a functional-based filing system is all about what we do, not necessarily what we're doing it on, right? So, for example, a functional-based filing system would be more like issuing permits or something like that, right? Rather than the piece of property that we're doing it on. So a subject-based one would be more about what we're doing it to, like a piece of property.
Okay.
Okay.
Councilor Subsequent?
I have more questions, but go ahead to somebody else.
I believe I saw Councilor Pell's hand.
Yes, thank you, sorry. I do have a question, but I do also have a few of them.
Okay.
So item under 4.18, sorry, I'm on the policy now, page 2.
Okay.
4.18 under media, it defines, it specifies paper disc, microfilm, or hard drive. Would cell phones or SIM cards also be considered under that? Because technically,
Yeah,
a cell phone
anything
would
that
be a
can hold
hard drive.
documents is considered a medium.
Okay,
Or anything that holds any kind of files, period, is a medium.
okay. I was just wondering if it didn't say cell phone, and I thought maybe it should be under. And then can I subsequent, I have 2 more, or?
Sure.
All right, okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Under 7.5, the emails, email records kept, managed, and accessible from outside of Outlook. So that would include like any transitionatory emails or transitionary emails that were like stored or we've saved them in folders.
Okay, with that one,
7.5 with storing backups of the emails outside of Outlook.
sorry, what was that?
So that would be storing all emails.
Yes,
Like there's backups of every single email that we save and don't delete.
yes.
So even transitory emails that we have
Yes.
held onto are in there, okay? And then just one more, item 10.5 under special circumstances. In the discussion of contaminated and or damaged records, do we have a system in place with how often we're checking on the stored records to look for damage?
We don't have a schedule set up,
Okay.
but we are in the storage location very regularly.
Quite often? Okay, perfect. I just wanted to ask. Thank you so much.
Did I see Councillor Taylor's hand?
No, I didn't.
Mayor Poole?
So going back to the definitions under the bylaw 124920, I'm wondering why the definition of personal information isn't included in those definitions. It's one of the things that is covered under information, and I realize that could be more of a FOIP thing, but information, when people are wondering about what is personal information, that is a nebulous definition and a nebulous concept to a lot of people. And I'm thinking that under definitions, that should be included.
Okay. That's definitely something we can look at. This document, though, really doesn't focus on personal information versus non-personal information.
Okay.
It's all treating all information equal.
So a person accessing FOIP would go through the FOIP legislation, not this legislation.
That's right.
Okay, that makes sense to me. One final one. And my last one is, at the very end of the explanation, it says that the policy will be coming before council to review, and will it include an appendix of the actual retention periods for all information that is out there? Because I noticed it is in the last one. I checked a couple of other municipalities. One had it, one didn't have it. Of all of when everything is going to be actually.
The actual retention schedule or the file plan is going to be like separate from this. It's going to be handled in the policy and not in the bylaw.
But we don't have it in as an appendix in the policy right now.
Okay.
And I'm just
Okay.
wondering if the intention is to include that as an appendix. I personally think it should be, simply because
Yeah.
it allows council a more accurate description of what is happening.
Okay, well, at this point, we hadn't planned on doing that, but we can.
Again, that's so little council to make that determination, but I think that if we're going to be signing a policy that says this is what administration is going to be responsible for, because after it goes back to administration, we won't be looking at anything that comes through, and I think that the amount of time that it's going to be kept, we should at least know.
Okay. Currently, we do not have the full file plan complete, though. So we wanted to have this in place so that we can actually make changes to the file plan and keep it growing, but have this in place already, right?
So having said that, if you were to add an appendix, couldn't you just add it as it came in? As the items came in?
The way we're trying to set it up is to have the CAO as the authorizer for the file plan. So, and that's going to be almost a living document. There's going to be changes to that like regularly as our organization and services change and adapt. We will need to modify the file plan probably monthly. And
Just one subsequent question, are there categories that could be inclusive of the different files that you're going to be generating and evaluating?
yes, now the file plan itself is very large. Like currently it's I think about 35 spreadsheets. Basically for every business unit we have a spreadsheet with the file plan in it.
So my last comment is maybe you could go to Grand Prairie and look at theirs, and they have it broken down into a fairly basic list, and they're able to define how long each of those categories are going to be. And maybe when we come back to the regular meeting, I could ask that question again, and you could look into that.
Okay.
Counselor Scott?
That's not working. Mayor Poole, did you look at the appendices at the end of the policy number 144.20? There's a bunch at the end of there. I don't know if that's what you're talking
No,
about.
I'm actually looking for the actual amount of time that they're going to be retained before they're disposed of.
Okay.
But thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, we have a motion in front of us. Counselor Alford?
I'll move that standing committee of council move to recommend that records and information management bylaw number 1249.20 and records information management policy number 144.20 be brought before council for formal approval.
Mayor Poole?
Just a matter of process. Can we do both of those together, or should they be separated into two separate motions?
Yeah, two separate.
Well, I'll take the back half off then.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. The second part of the motion, Counselor. Oh, Hoover, I'm sorry. I've been in Canmore for a week. I'm exhausted.
I'll move that standing committee of council move to recommend that information management policy number 144-20 be brought for council for formal approval.
Perfect. Any discussion? All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously.
Thank you.
Moving right along to 6.2, request for decision, council boards, committees, policy and procedure.
Thank you, Mayor, your worship, members of council. As always, excited to be here. Exciting evening, lots on the go right now. So what's more exciting than talking about appointing some volunteers to boards and committees? This is a ongoing conversation we've had for quite some time, with a small interruption with just a minor pandemic going through. So we kind of are coming on a timeline. We have a work meeting scheduled tomorrow, or maybe it was yesterday, was the last day for us to be receiving our intentions from all of our volunteers. I believe we have 23 positions to fill this year with boards and committees. So in some conversation with administration, it was determined that we would look at, we had discussed with volunteer management, which would be inclusive of all of our volunteers. So what this is bringing it into a policy for boards and committees appointment by council for all of the different committees and structures that we have bylaws in terms of references for, and then the new ones should there come time in the future, how we'll rid of those. And the processes that we are going to go through, which is the same as we did last year. The process has not changed for how we will go through and scrutiny, recommend, and those sorts of things. So, would you like me to walk through it?
I think that we've probably all read it. Any questions from council? Mayor Poole?
So under structure, number 3.1, council has currently never appointed council members to the Subdivision Development and Appeal Board. Now, when I look through both our bylaw and the MGA, we are allowed to, but it has been tradition within our council that they never be appointed. And I'm just wondering, you are perfectly correct in what you're bringing forward to us, but I think council should be aware of the dynamics. And when I look back at it, we are allowed to appoint councillors to that board, and there will be pros and cons to that process. Personally, I like the process where we do not have any councillors involved in that, but on the other side, it would bring some experience and background, as long as they're not members of the Municipal Planning Commission. That is what the actual bylaw and the MGA states. So I guess maybe as we're doing it right now, would it be appropriate to talk about it now, or would you prefer to wait until we come into the council?
What does administration think?
We're still, just want to look at a few things up. Maybe we'll do that and have that discussion when we bring it back to council. If that's okay.
That works for me. Mayor Poole?
Now, 3.11 is another area that I'm wondering how we arrived at the number of 2 years before council members could apply for actual reappointment to a board. And I'm wondering if you could provide some background as to how you arrived at that.
We did discuss that at the last meeting as well, and I believe our conversation was that we don't want to impede volunteers from volunteering. I believe it is something that we have seen in other municipalities, that they just have a waiting period if potentially there is information that a council member might have. I feel like there's no right or wrong answer. We can put whatever we want.
Councillor Bell?
Thank you. Just to that point, it would be interesting to verify, because we had this discussion also when we were discussing staffing. I'm sorry, I didn't look up which bylaw it was, but I believe the term that we'd come across for that was 1 year. So town councilors weren't allowed to apply for a staffing position for 1 year.
Yeah.
So I'd be interested to see this maybe align with that. I didn't think that it should be a stricter deadline for someone to volunteer. So that's my thought. Yes.
Mayor Poole?
Thank you. And my last one is on page 50 to 16 on this presentation. And it's using the volunteer candidate screening process. A volunteer programmer reviews screening applicants in response to online submissions. Information is provided to council for formal appointment. I just want to confirm, I believe you said it, that we will be receiving the same amount of information as we had in the past. We had quite a process to arrive at what we felt should be provided, so it will be the same amount of information.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Bell?
Thank you. I just had a couple of questions as well. So back up to section 3 under membership. 3.3, the board vacancies shall be advertised and applied for. So it talks about the form there, but it doesn't say whether or not we had decided if the board vacancies are going to be advertised as soon as they're available or waiting until the organizational meeting. So we had that discussion of other councils that advertise them as they become available. They actually do it as job postings on their individual websites. And I believe, from what I recall from the conversation, that was the way our council was planning to go as well. So I believe that part needs to be adjusted.
Yeah, and I think part of that conversation, and I realize it's been quite some time, so I believe if we're within like the 6 months prior to the org meeting, that we've had that, well, it can wait, these groups don't typically meet during the summer, a lot of them, those sorts of things.
Totally. So I just feel that there should be some sort of timeline put into that. As well, 3.8, discussion of immediate family members are permitted to serve on council boards and committees. I think should clearly state, however, that they cannot be on the same board.
So then a question I would have is if someone was appointed to, say, the FCSS board, and then council changes membership annually typically.
We had done it every 2 years last
Okay.
time, but I feel it's important if, as voting members, then they shouldn't be allowed to be on the same board. And then just one more.
Yes.
Under section 4, membership orientation, 4.2B, it speaks about the criminal record check. However, there doesn't appear to be a timeline associated with it on here, and I also didn't see that on the appendices there, on that form.
Oh, we've had so much back and forth with this.
When I did look at it today, and I didn't see it on there?
It might, I know we had a lot of back and forth, and as soon as they were appointed, our messaging was we needed to receive their records check within 90 days, just in case it required fingerprinting and things, but yeah, I appreciate that as well, thank you.
Thanks, and that. Oh, sorry, I did have one more.
Yes.
I should check before I 19.2 in, about administrative committees. Have we received any minutes from administrative committees? Because it says we're supposed to be, but I don't really ever remember seeing those. So that might be just something to add under administration there to have those forwarded.
We've only, no, we haven't taken official minutes, nor would probably be just notes.
Okay,
So that's something to ensure
so it
that
just needs to,
are provided.
okay. Perfect, thank you.
And then I had a couple of questions as well. Thank you for taking care of some of them for me. So back to 3.11, I did want to weigh in on that. I don't see why there needs to be a 2-year wait. I would like to see as well the, with exceptions to be made at the discretion of council, removed. I think that it appears as though we are allowing council the power to pick and choose, possibly allowing bias to come into that process. And I don't think that that's the stage that we want to be setting. As well, for the 2-year wait, I agree with you. I don't see why on earth we would be turning down volunteers and telling people that they can't apply for a board for 2 years. So I do think that that needs to be changed. And then down to 7.3, I believe
I'm
that
sorry, can I interrupt?
Yes.
You mentioned remove, the word removed.
at the discretion of council, I think that that needs to be taken out.
Okay. Thank you.
And then down to 7.3, I believe that that should be changed to read in the current year's town budget. I would prefer that all of our boards run on a yearly basis annually and that they don't continue to accrue money from year to year. I'd like to be able to see any benefit of unspent dollars if we have them. And then one last one. And then number 6 on page 51. I'm just curious if that is happening before appointment of boards by council. I think that it should specify a timeline. I don't like the idea of board administrators picking and choosing from the group of volunteers themselves. We have our volunteer coordinator to do that.
What number is that?
It would be number 6 on page 51. And I do believe that it,
Appendix B.
yes, sorry.
Oh, okay.
I believe we should have a timeline. That should be happening after a volunteer is appointed to the committee, and it should specify.
So volunteer programmer connects with the administrator of each board to inform them of which volunteers have reapplied and provide information about the applicants, that one?
Yes, I don't think that we should be supplying information about all new applicants that have applied to the board. I think we should be supplying the information about the new applicant who has been appointed to said board. Otherwise, it appears as though they are able to pick and choose out of the volunteers which ones they would prefer to sit on the board, and that's not.
I would say though, I know we've had a conversation in the past as we've gone through this, I know because I work closely with our volunteer program, sort of trying to look at sort of demographics as well. And keeping in mind the information that we can share and can't share, and saying, I know said individual strictly by name alone, and what's on the page, I don't necessarily know their age or their demographic or those sorts of things, and trying to, when we're recommending which volunteers can go where, trying to maximize the use of volunteers. So instead of ending up with somebody sitting on 3 boards because they're interested, potentially we could utilize 3 volunteers on 3 boards, providing greater use of volunteers, as well as trying to balance that demographic. So we don't end up with a bunch of likewise demographic people on the same board. And if we don't know necessarily maybe enough about who's on that board, it's nice to be able to just inquire, like, what does that look like? are you missing, like, do you have a really young board of potentially people that are all really similar
If I
versus?
may, I understand where
Yeah.
you're going with this, and I do think that those are conversations that the volunteer programmer could have, but I don't think that the volunteer programmer should be telling the administrator of each board who has applied and giving them choice, and this is how this makes it seem.
Okay. Yeah, that's
I think it
definitely
needs
not
to be
the intent.
reworded.
Okay.
I believe I saw Councillor Hoover and then Mayor Poole.
Yeah, actually, I just had a comment on your suggestions for 3.11. I'm not sure I see a problem with the discretion of council. I mean, we as a council right now are making decisions on this policy. I think that future councils should have the ability, should there be some need, to appoint a counselor to a board if there's a vacancy, if there's a level of expertise that they provide to a board. I think if it were an individual that could have that discretion, maybe it could be favoritism, but as a council, I don't see any reason why that would be in any way favored. It would be the favor of the entire council, which in that respect could change this whole policy at that time if they wanted to.
Mayor Poole and then Councillor Appel.
So going back to the point for 7.3 that the chair raised, I believe that we need to investigate the Library Act and our current policies regarding application of the budget to the library board. Currently, right now, we provide a set of monies. They aren't required to report, they're required to report back to us through their auditing purposes, but I believe that we do not have control as to how their money is being spent other than what money we provide to them. So I guess we need to investigate that further before we make a change to that board.
Councillor Appel.
Thank you. Mine's actually just in response to Councillor Hoover, and with the speaking about exceptions to be made at the discretion of council. I feel like that part should be removed simply because anything in this policy is at the discretion of council. Council, in fact, is making the final votes anyway, so I felt it should be removed, but simply because I felt it redundant.
Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, we have a recommendation in front of us. Councillor Appel.
Thank you. I move that standing committee of council move to recommend the council boards / committees policy and procedure for the town of Blackfalds to council as amended for approval.
Mayor Poole.
So I guess the difficulty I have is some of the amendments that have come forward are haven't been decided on. So to move this as amended, do we need to go through another process where we actually approve the amendments before we make those changes? Because I believe that there's a couple on there that are controversial or we don't have unanimous agreement on.
I think we can manage the changes that were made tonight and bring it back, and if council desires us to have first reading at that time, if there's any changes, we can make those changes after first reading if council is not satisfied with the changes at the first reading.
Thank you.
Any further questions? So we have a motion. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Moving right along, we have 7.1, the letter from Mayor Veer. Mayor Poole.
Before we go on to that, may I just ask that Director Bourne just explain a little bit about tonight's celebration?
Yes,
And
absolutely.
also give thanks
And
to
motion.
Minister Ahir, who also attended this. Could you just give a little talk about that? with your,
Absolutely.
thank
For
you.
sure. So that was pretty exciting. Thank you all for coming. Bridging Diversity is a program that we started back in 2018 with the New Horizons for Seniors funding. And it has been very successful with a really small, sort of intimate group of folks. And we had, I think, 35 people RSVP for tonight's events last Wednesday when we discovered that the minister was planning to attend, and we thought, oh dear, we need to get some more bodies involved. So thankfully, we had really good turnout tonight, and I assume council had a good opportunity to chat with Minister here. This is exciting to see. We had some representation from Oakland County, and the ladies in attendance as well. So thank you all for coming. And this is an event that does continue to take place, but until our COVID restrictions are allowable, we won't be able to continue to do it. As typically what takes place is our families, someone volunteers to provide a meal with their heritage and culture, and they work together with After the Grind staff to prepare it in their licensed kitchen, and then it's shared, and there's discussions surrounding sort of significance of mealtime and eating together and things. So.
So just adding to that, Minister here is the Minister of Cultural, Multiculturalism, and Status of Women. Her presence there was very much appreciated. She was very down to earth in her approach. She talked with all of us. She wanted to see what was going on, and I think it demonstrated a real attempt to move into the community and have the community and see what the community is doing. We had a very good conversation. MLA Orr was also present, and I believe their attendance was, well, in my opinion, was very much appreciated and demonstrated her commitment to communities in general as far as her portfolio is concerned.
Thank you, Mayor Poole. Thank you, Sue. So we will move right into 7.1, the letter from Mayor Beer. Mayor Poole.
Thank you. This is a request for support for HL to oppose the consolidation of emergency services dispatch services. I forwarded information from the city of Red Deer regarding the change in dispatch services to council over the last week with 3 different emails. Administration has suggested that they do not feel there will be a change to our fire services response, but it appears that the proposed changes will affect ambulance dispatch considerably. I'm asking council if they wish to provide this support in opposition to ask what you feel should be included in any letter we send out to Minister Shandro. The issue is that the provincial government, the AHS is proposing consolidation from regional services, which is down to 2 major ones, one in Edmonton, one in Calgary. And the suggestion from Mayor Beer is that this will considerably decrease the amount of response time. And by considerably, it might only be 20 to 30 seconds. But in a person in need, a person who is in dire straits, that can be a difference between life and death. And they are asking for us to support them in opposition to the consolidation of these services. And if we wish to do that, I'd like to ask council what they would like to see included in such a letter. Thank you.
Councilor Taylor?
Well, I think regionalization makes sense when you have to bring a specialist in that's going to serve a large area where you would have enough patients to keep them busy. But when you're dealing with emergency response, generally having people there when you need them and people who understand what there is. When you have Edmonton or Calgary dispatching, there's the greater chance for a disconnect. And that disconnect is, anytime you don't have anybody trained, but I think the thing is we've seen regionalization, the benefits and the disadvantages. Regionalization often puts the smaller communities at the biggest risk. And that's the biggest challenge in this. And I don't know how they have any assurances that they could do anything other than not put us at risk, because trying to describe an area where somebody who local would be able to understand it. I think we need to support the mayor in this, I think, for Red Deer, and I think it is really one of the things that we shouldn't compromise on from the province.
Councillor Cooper?
I would somewhat disagree, not entirely with Councillor Taylor, but even in terms of the argument that's being placed here by the city of Red Deer, I'm not sure that there's as much concern over it. I worked in EMS. I don't believe that there's much more advantage to having it regionalized. They're not giving you turn-by-turn information. There's some efficiencies that are gained by centralizing this. There's some more, not just efficiencies, but manpower is more accessible. There's also some difficulties, and I can recall working in EMS where there's things that are improperly dispatched to the wrong region, by a centralized call service. So I don't entirely understand the argument that the city of Red Deer has, so I'm not sure that there's as big an issue with this being centralized as they're arguing.
Mayor Poole?
One of the areas that Red Deer in particular, but as well as some of the other centers will experience is that currently when they dispatch their fire services at the same time they dispatch their emergency ambulance services. The same dispatcher's in the room, and a person will receive, very often the fire department arriving there prior to when the ambulance arrives, and they provide emergency health services, basic life services. That will be eliminated because what will have to happen is that it will go into the city of Red Deer. It will then be sent to the call center in Edmonton or Calgary. And then if they decide that they need fire services to respond as well, it will go back to the city of Red Deer for them to be responded. Currently, the cost savings will come in the fact that in larger centers such as Red Deer, they are receiving several $1,000s worth of service at no cost to AHS because emergency fire services are responding. It's not as important out in Blackfalds, but we will still see a delay in dispatch services, and the costs that they are possibly suggesting might happen are not anywhere near the magnitude that the report that came forward suggested. So they'll be receiving, maybe down from 75 dispatchers down to 50 or so dispatchers. So the amount of savings, I think, is more important that we make sure that people's lives who are at stake will receive the increased services. We've also heard from communities, other communities where the local dispatchers are much more in tune with the area and being able to dispatch to Delburn, to the smaller centers around, because they have first-hand experience. They don't have as large an area. So when you're looking at people being dispatched to Timbuktu, much more likely to happen in centralized dispatch services.
Councillor Taylor?
Yeah, I haven't worked in Alberta Health and Services, and I haven't never been in an ambulance, but I do have calls and call outs for heating for the Red Deer Public School District. And sometimes, I don't know, the call center is always changing. They're always having somebody different. That's ones in Newfoundland and nice people. But, that information, I swear, all the on-call people spend more time training to get that information correct, to get it right. I believe that same transition would happen in the province when you take, and I think Councillor Poole hit that touch, is that locally, when you know your area, you're familiar with it, you can respond to it. But when you're not local, And most of the calls you're going to be, if you're coming from Edmonton, you're going to be very familiar with Edmonton. But there's a whole different demographic when you move into different regions of our province. I just believe that having people familiar has that possibility. And I know this, I came across an accident about a decade ago on Highway 2A coming home. I was playing poker, and I had the guy with me. He called 911. I helped pull the guy off the side of the road. His legs were all damaged. The vehicles were on fire. And I said, make sure you tell him to come from Blackfalds, because that's the best chance is, like there's 2 kilometers away. They came, Lacombe came later and released them. I think personal knowledge can make a big difference in, whether there was a chance for somebody to survive or not. And I think when you remove that, because what's the next thing is, well, maybe it's in Newfoundland. Maybe we're going to get a better rate there, and then we can have the whole province done that way. I just think keeping it local is still the best thing for our somebody who's injured.
Councillor Spot?
I have to agree, my mic's not working as well. I really think it needs to stay centralized, again, because the people living in this area know where to dispatch. Also, when you call 911, especially when I was in my accident last year, while you're on the phone, they ask, do you need an ambulance? You have that choice. If they're gonna call Edmonton or Calgary dispatch service, now that they're back and forth, that's gonna be more than 30 seconds. So I think that we need to support this letter, and yeah.
Councillor Hill?
Sorry, I just wasn't sure if we were gonna go around and get everyone's vote, but I am also in support of Mayor Poole and supporting Mayor Beer in this, in writing the letter.
Councillor Olfert, and then Mayor Poole.
I'm just kind of curious. I haven't read a lot about what they plan to do, but it sounds like if you call 911 with this new system, then you're going to get an operator who says, "What's your emergency?" And then you're going to say, "I'm hurt," and then they're going to transfer you to another operator that'll send you to an ambulance. I'm not seeing how that would be more efficient when they're claiming, like provincial government is saying it will be. It seems like if you're going to call 911 and they're going to say, "What's your emergency?" they will dispatch what is needed, not bounce around phone calls. So I'm not sure if this is really something that can be supported without, some better information.
Mayor Poole?
So right now, AHS and fire services are in the same room, dispatching room. They will not be in the same room if they centralize it, and they will have to go to Edmonton and then back to Edmonton, Calgary, and then back to fire services. That's what the main difference is. If the chair wishes, I have a motion I would like to put forward.
I would actually just like to weigh in first, and then I'll hear your motion. Speaking as somebody who has been in an ambulance rather recently with a child who had difficulty breathing, as well as somebody who grew up in this area, who had a father who was in a very traumatic accident, and without having fire services respond first, I would not have had the extra years with my dad that I did. So this is very near and dear to my heart. I wholly support Mayor Beer's letter. I 100% would be in favor of sending a letter on behalf of the community of Blackfalds, knowing that we have a ton of families here who also have similar situations to my own. I'm not going to go into it much more because I get a little emotional, but I do think that centralization as far as emergency services should not even be in question. It shouldn't be. Mayor Poole?
Thank you for that. I would like to move that the town of Blackfalds send a letter to Minister Shandro with CCs to Mayor Red Deer, MLA Ron Orr, Premier of Alberta, stating that the town of Blackfalds is opposed to the elimination of regional dispatch services of ambulance in Red Deer because data have proven there will be a reduction in dispatch time that may seriously affect the outcome of persons in distress. And furthermore, the data provided has not shown that this change will create significant cost reductions for AHS. I believe I supplied that motion. Are you able to put it up on the screen?
That's okay, I think we all heard it. Is there any further discussion or, yes?
Sorry, just a question on Mayor Poole's motion. You said if it makes a reduction in reaction time or increase in reaction time?
That the data has proven there will be a reduction in dispatch time. So in other words, the dispatch time will be lessened if
If they make the change.
if they make. Thank you for clarifying that.
Okay, because it should be the other way around.
There,
With centralization, there will be an increase in, a decrease in the reaction time.
reaction
It'll
time,
actually be more time.
reduction in the reaction time in dispatch.
Okay.
Friendly amendment?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Moving along, we have an information item, 8.1, 2020 AUMA Virtual Convention. Mayor Poole?
Thank you. We're all excited that AUMA is going to be providing some education sessions in addition to their regular AUMA convention that will be held on Wednesday evening, Thursday, and Friday next week. So what I'm wondering about is with the provision of the education systems that are going to be out there, I want council to just be able to work to have a consistent approach to how they're going to be putting in for times that they are attending these. So option one would be that council would allow 0.5 day remuneration for every 2 sessions that education sessions councilors attend, with a limit of 1 day remuneration. So that would limit it to basically 4 sessions, and that would most closely follow council's 3-day remuneration of attendance at AUMA. Just a note, 2 days will be provided for those who are attending Wednesday night and Thursday and Friday. Option 2, council would allow 0.5 days remuneration for every 2 sessions council attend with no remuneration limit. These will be in addition to the 2 days for the above noted AUMA attendance. And in both options, I would like feedback as to whether attendance is at a live session or watching it as a recorded session. So I guess I'm just looking for how council wishes to do this.
Councillor Taylor?
It wasn't too clear, Mayor Poole. Did you say it was 2 days to attend AUMA?
Right now, we're attending Wednesday evening, all day Thursday, and Friday morning. So that, to me, equates to approximately 2 days.
Okay, so I didn't look at the time, how long we're there for Wednesday or,
Wednesday, all we have is
okay.
is the opening ceremonies, and we also suggested that we would do that at home if we wish to do that.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Bell?
Thank you. I would be fine with the option 1 from the mayor. So half a day for 2 sessions with a limit of 4 to count as 1 full day. However, my request would be that would also include if we're watching the replays.
Councillor Taylor?
Yeah, I didn't catch the last part.
Just if that, and that would count if we're watching the replays and not watching them live. And
Yeah.
my reasoning for that, I guess I can further explain, is just because the times aren't really, they're not really first thing in the morning and they're not really at the end of the day. So I would prefer to watch them as a replay after hours.
Counselor Taylor?
I really like that portion because if you had to do 2 sessions, if you did one at 9 o'clock and the other one's at 3 or 2 o'clock, for me, that's my whole day of work. Like it would be, I would have to take the whole day vacation to do that. And I wouldn't do that for half a day. I would, so, but I do like the replay portion of that because then I could work that better in my schedule.
Mayor Poole?
So when I inquired from AMA about this, and they said they will be attempting to gain permission for all sessions, but they won't necessarily, all sessions will not necessarily be recorded depending on the presenter's wishes.
So if I could weigh in as well, I feel very strongly that we do the 4 sessions for the 1 day of remuneration broken down with live or replay. And my reasoning for that is I have 4 small children. It may or may not be possible for me to sit and attend a live session in my home with my children. It might be more beneficial for me to do that while they are in bed sleeping. So that would work much better for myself. Mayor Poole?
So I think I've heard back, and I think that all of council has come to a pretty good agreement as to what we need to do.
Perfect,
And that's all that I was really asking for.
perfect.
So thank you.
All right, then we can move along. Mayor Poole again, 12.1, FCM sustainability.
I sent out a notice, I think on Friday, showing everybody that the FCM Municipal Sustainability Conference for Municipalities is a virtual one this year with a relatively small registration fee. This is normally held in communities across Canada, and Blackfalds has never attended because we didn't see the value of sending a person to that. With it being available as a virtual event, we could, if council was interested, we could attend and we could decide for ourselves whether or not there's value in it and whether or not in the future council might decide that they wish to send a representative to that. So I guess basically I'm wondering if there's anybody that would object to myself or any other councillor attending that, utilizing their education allowance.
Do I see anybody with objections? I see none.
Thank you.
All right, and seeing as the next thing on our agenda are FOIP items, does anyone want to move for a 5-minute recess? Councillor Hill?
So moved.
All in favor? And that is carried unanimously.
I'm still shivering.
Right, my hands are so cold.
Should have dug out your warm
I stopped
coat.
and talked.
Would have been a good day